Hello everybody and welcome to this all-new episode of the Northern Virginia Sports Report. I'm your host, Monica Moore, and we have the first part of our spring preview episode tonight, and I'm delighted to be joined by Paul Frummel from the Fairfax Times to help us talk about everything going on with spring sports from throughout the region. But before we jump into everything, we want to thank the folks that help make our program possible. First of all, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs. Also, special thanks to Craig Strabutzel for the fantastic photos that he provides every week. And also special thanks to Viva Loudon for all of the photos and additional content that Dan Sousa provides for us. Don't forget that you can get copies of this program at www.pressboxvideo.com. And you can check out our website with the Video Vault feature for highlights, interviews, and more. Don't forget to become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page, and please do send us any comments, suggestions, story ideas, or anything else you want to share with us at our email address. Well, as always, we first of all want to start out with a couple of news and notes from around the region. We always have college signings to report. So a couple of Stonebridge soccer players, first of all, signing their national letters of intent to compete at the Division I level next season. Abdul Shaban from Stonebridge going to stay in the area. He'll be playing at George Washington University next year. And then Jennifer Skogerbo will be playing at the University of Connecticut next season. Other college signings we want to talk about. First of all, congratulations to Travis Henry from Briar Woods. He will be playing at Division III Ferrum next year. And then finally, we want to talk a little bit more about Stonebridge. Their lacrosse team participated in the Brambleton Ribbon Run 5K for breast cancer. Over 100 people from Stonebridge participated. A great picture there from the girls lacrosse team head coach Kristen Howard. You can just see how many people from Stonebridge showed up to participate at that event. So great job from the Stonebridge athletes taking time away from lacrosse to help a good cause. And then, Paul, some other exciting news that's happened this week in the region is that Andy Najjar, the phenom from Edison High School, signing with DC United. He's only 17. He'll be wearing the number 14 that was worn by Ben Olsen, of course, the big standout for DC United. So I know folks from around the area are very excited to get to watch him continue to play and develop in this area. Well, we would be remiss if we didn't first talk a little bit about our winter sports wrap-up, because several basketball teams from around this area won state championships a couple of weeks ago. So we first want to revisit that a little bit before we jump into everything for the spring. So first, let's talk a little bit about Freedom, because Paul, we saw this team a couple of times this year, and they just looked destined to repeat, and they did, becoming the first Loudon basketball team to win back-to-back state championships a year after they were the first Loudon basketball team to win a state championship. And you see there the players that stood out all year continuing to stand out. This one was never in question. Freedom led the whole way.
Yeah, shout out to South Riding, my hometown. Freedom just dominating. Kelsey Buchanan, 25 points, 16 rebounds, and 9 blocks. That's a line you're used to seeing from Kelsey Buchanan, obviously, and Deanna Scott, too, with those 12 points and 7 rebounds. So Freedom, it didn't really seem to be in question the entire year. They just had a dominant year, and that's the way you come back from a state championship, is you just keep that momentum moving, and that's what they did.
And of course, what's going to be interesting to see with the graduation of Buchanan and Escorza is how that program shapes up for next year, because obviously Jason Eldridge is one of the top coaches from around the area, but it's going to be a very different team.
That's the hard part, to three-peat, obviously, and it's even too early to even talk about three-peating, but they're losing a lot of top talent, and teams like Loudoun County, other teams in the area, they're going to look to jump on Freedom now.
Well, speaking of Loudoun County teams, we also have to talk about Potomac Falls and their magical season, because they too won the state championship, but this one was not as unquestioned as the Freedom one, because Potomac Falls was actually down for a lot of this game. They came back in the fourth quarter based on some jumpers from Zach Curran, a big dunk by Greg Graves, but they had defeated Broadway earlier in the season, and then it looked like they might not get the state championship, and then Who steps up? Obviously, Lucas Mihailovic scoring 10 of his team's last 17 points. Potomac Falls wins the state championship. Brendan Chesson scores all 11 of those points after the first half. So when they needed their big guns to really come on strong, they did. And this team is just the opposite from Freedom because they have all this talent coming back. I mean, they're going to be crazy good next year.
Freedom was the first team to win back-to-back state titles. Potomac Falls could be the second. Mihailovic with 33 points and 13 rebounds, a double-double for him, and he's a big game player, stepped up in a big game. Greg Graves almost a triple-double here with 15 rebounds, 8 points, and 8 blocks. So they're big players we've talked about all year. They step up in the big game, and yes, they did handily beat Broadway earlier in the year, but again, different animal in the postseason and certainly a different animal in the state championship game.
Well, one other area team to talk a little bit about, and that is the George Mason Mustangs, because talk about repeating back-to-back state titles. George Mason also getting it done in 1A Division II basketball because, of course, they won last year and then repeat this year behind the senior tandem of Chantal Thomas and Nicole Mitchell, and then, of course, the freshman talent, Stephanie Cheney, also having a big game. But they had to square off against Andrea White, who's a Georgetown recruit, one of the top players. People have been talking about her a lot and really did a good job with her. I mean, you can't shut her down. That is not possible. But Bria Plattenberg and the Mustangs really did a nice job. And this is just a great win for them and LeBrian Thomas because it's always hard to repeat. But again, George Mason was one of these teams that just the whole season, it just never looked in question because they were so strong all year long, start to finish. Yeah,
we saw them earlier in the first round of the state tournament. It was a laugher. They're just so dominant. And special shout out to Nicole Mitchell, 13 points and 14 rebounds. I'm assuming, I haven't seen Andrea, but I'm assuming she's a tall girl with 17 points, 16 rebounds. So for Nicole Mitchell to battle with her,
I think
great
she's
job.
6 foot.
Yeah, okay, well there you go.
So, but obviously lots more basketball ahead for her. But now we are going to finally segue into our spring sports preview. And we have a special treat for you because we have tons of phone guests tonight, starting with our first one, Lauren Jankuska from the Chantilly Chargers soccer team. Lauren, can you hear us? Well, Lauren, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, your team is one of the ones that people are really focusing on this year because you had quite the storybook season last year. So first, I want to ask you a little bit about that. I mean, obviously, you capped it off nicely, but what were some of the highlights for you guys last year? There were so many.
I think one of the highlights definitely went with how our season went. We were seeded 4th when we went into the tournament, and we made it through districts, and we had a thrilling win against Robinson. Robinson played a great game. It was double overtime. We ended up going into PKs, and we won on like the 8th shot or something. And after that, we moved into regionals, and we had a lot of really tough games, but somehow we pulled them out, and we finally made it into the state tournament. And I think the biggest thrill of the whole season was just winning states. I don't think there's anything that can beat that.
And Lauren, you mentioned that Robinson game, 7-6 win for Chantilly, yourself being a goalkeeper and going to PKs. How did that win help your confidence moving forward and the team's confidence as a whole?
It was definitely a big deal. For me personally, stopping PKs has always been one of my difficulties, so when I could actually make the save, it was just such a great feeling. And then it all hit me we won the district championship, and considering we were a 4th seed, that was a big deal for us. So that worked out well. And as a team, I think it really just got us pumped. Robinson was a big, rivalry, you could say, for us, just because they're such a strong team. We lost to them a bunch of times in the past 2 seasons. And so beating them and, just all of it together just gave us that momentum we needed to go into the regions.
So Lauren, obviously this is a new team this year. You lost a lot of talent to graduation, but you're one of the senior leaders on the team this year. So how are you viewing your role in that capacity as kind of one of the seniors?
I'm hoping that I can encourage and lead the rest of the girls on the team. We were last season a younger team, and now a lot of our defense is juniors, and they've been around, and I hope that I can help the younger girls to just be ready for it. It's a step up from playing club in 8th grade, and I guess just you know, being there for them, telling them like, oh, hey, it's okay if you mess up, and things like that, just to help them like adjust, the younger girls at least, and hopefully I can help them out with that.
And Lauren, you guys set a pretty high bar last year with the state title. What are some of the goals for this year?
You know, obviously we want to come out, we want to try to go back to states, but definitely we just want to work really hard and we want to become the best team we can be. And if that includes us winning districts and going to states again, obviously that's something we want to achieve. But I think as of right now, one of our main goals is just to be the best team we can be, and if that leads us to winning districts and states again, then that's what we want.
Lauren, obviously looking at your resume, I mean, you were the top goalkeeper in the state last year, but who are some of the players on your team that you're expecting to step up this year to help you guys defend some of those championships you won last year?
Definitely Maddie Brown. She played defense for us last year, and she might be playing a little bit forward for us this year, but she's just very good. She's quick, and she knows what she's doing. She has a very good sense of the game. We have a bunch of other upperclassmen who all have a lot of experience on the field, and even our younger classmen, we have a couple new girls this season who so far in our scrimmages have showed a lot of potential, and I think that with a little more practice, our team as a whole is just going to be a really good unit.
Now looking a little forward down the road, you're going to go to St. Joe's. Talk to me about that decision and how you came to it.
Actually, it's kind of a funny story. I went up to St. Joe's to watch a Vermont game. Vermont was playing Villanova, and it just happened to rain that day, and the game got moved to St. Joe's. And I was up there, and I was like, wow, I love this campus. And so I contacted the coach, and we started talking, and everything worked out. But it's definitely not the traditional soccer recruiting story.
Is it good to get that decision out of the way before your senior year? Do you feel like you can just focus on high school soccer right now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, last year I was kind of looking at the whole college thing, and it was stressful, but this year all I can worry about is improving my personal game and hoping that I become the best goalie I can for next year.
Well, Lauren, thanks so much for joining us. We wish Chantilly the best of luck this year.
Thank you so much.
All right, and we will be joined later on by Lauren's teammate, Maddie Brown, that she alluded to when she was talking about some of the players that they're expecting to step up this season. But Paul, let's take a look now at some of the top players from around the northern region that everybody is going to be keeping watch on this year. Starting out, first of all, when you look at this list, obviously Madison Brown, Lauren Jankuska on this list. Sam Cormode, also from Fairfax, is a goalkeeper that's gotten a lot of attention. And then Annandale as well, having some strong players, particularly on the defensive end in the Patriot District this year.
And look at all these girls that are going on, already have their college decision. Madison Brown at JMU, Jenna Richmond, obviously the great Centerville midfielder going to UCLA. We just saw Lauren Jankuska going to St. Joseph. So a lot of top talent, as you can see, just by the fact that they're already committed to go play college at the next level.
Absolutely. Soccer in the northern region is so strong, and one indicator of that is how many players that move on to the next level. Now, one team that people are really excited about this year is McLean. They had such a good year last year, and of course, Andy Romness is back to lead them with a very exciting junior class, so people just think that they're going to be very exciting for years to come. And then another player that a lot of coaches talked to me about was Charlene Ballinger from over at Mount Vernon, that doesn't get as much publicity as she probably deserves, but there's a lot of talent over in the National District, and she's one of them.
And look at the Madison trio right there, Grasso, Kuykendall, and Irwin, three great players for the Warhawks. So it should be interesting with McLean, Madison, some other teams in that Liberty District.
And moving on, we have a couple more that we want to talk about. Oakton. They seem to be so good in so many sports. One reason why the Coyer twins, we talked a lot about them during basketball. Catherine Coyer, of course, was widely recognized last year for her defensive abilities. And then Alex Stratton is going to play for Duke next year, and so she's a great talent. But their sophomore class over at Oakton is so talented. Last year when they were in the Northern Region Final against Chantilly, people were talking about that because they were led by all these freshmen. So all those girls are going to be around for years to come.
And of course, Robinson, the old standby of Audrey Berry, Allie Heck, Barbara Plattenberg, and Jensen Smith. I mean, just Robinson always has talent. And we've seen these girls for a little while now, especially Plattenberg, just a freshman last year, one of the best freshmen, if not the best freshman in the region. So it's going to be great to see her grow.
And then continuing on talking about the Patriot District, South County has so much talent. We talked a lot about these players last year on the program, but you see a lot of them have made their college decisions. Morgan Duffy will be playing with Lauren Jankuska at St. Joseph's, but lots of players, as we talked about, Jennifer Skogerbo, already mentioned earlier today about her decision to attend UConn, and then they've got a great freshman as well. And then finishing out with the end of the list, another team people are really excited about this year is Westfield. Abby Sams, a great player, and Woodson having a lot of talent as well.
Most definitely. You can tell why the Northern region dominates this soccer in this state. Well, not dominates, but it does very, very well with soccer in this state because all of the talent that we have.
Well, speaking of dominating in the state, at least last year, now we are joined on the phone by Maddie Brown. Maddie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Another member of Chantilly's state championship team from last year. Now, Maddie, Lauren, we talked to her a little earlier in the program, and I already knew this, but she said that there's some talk, at least, of you playing a little on offense this year as a forward, and I think you do that on your club team a bit. But can you talk a little bit about whether you prefer playing defense or offense better?
I don't really have a favorite position. I like both, but my team helps me. Like, they make me better. So.
Well, we look forward to seeing how that's going to shake out this year with where you end up on the field.
And Maddie, right, Wakefield, Fairfax, Herndon already wins for you guys this season. Where do you see the team right now?
Wait, can you repeat that?
Wakefield, you got wins over Wakefield, Fairfax, and Herndon. Well, excuse me, sorry.
So Herndon didn't happen last night, but we don't mean to be projecting.
Yeah. Okay, so where do you see the team right now?
I see our team, like, we have a good chance of going to where we were last year at states. We've improved greatly, and we will progress throughout the year.
And then, of course, weather permitting, you will play Forest Park tomorrow. Are there specific things that you guys have been focusing on for that game, or just still kind of getting into the spring season right now, since with the weather and everything, you haven't had as much of an opportunity to be out on the fields?
Well, we've been working on like direct kicks and indirect kicks, but nothing specific. We've gotten out a lot to practice, so we have a lot of team unity, and we're very close and work well together.
Obviously, you guys are defending state champions. Do you feel pressure starting out this year?
There's a little bit of pressure, but we can handle it. Like our team, we aren't worried about the pressure. It's just we know we can make it if we just work hard and keep up everything that we've been doing.
Now, I know one player for you guys that's been having a great season so far is Jackie Cider. Can you talk a little bit about her? It seems like she's really stepping up her game and filling into the footsteps a little bit of some of the players that graduated from last season.
Jackie is a great player. She works hard. She has good foot skills and just knows what to do with the ball and when to do it.
Now, you're already committed to JMU. Can you talk to me about that decision?
I committed to JMU because I like the campus and the team. They're really good and they work hard and they're competitive. And they have great academics. So.
Well, Maddie, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to following Chantilly this year.
Oh, no problem.
Thanks.
All right, so we'll have a little more girls soccer later on in the program, but now let's segue into a sport that I know is near and dear to your heart, Paul, which is softball. And there was huge news out in Loudoun County earlier, I guess this school year, when it was announced that Amber Jackson would be taking over that program. Of course, she is extremely well known in this area for her work as a player out on the field, and will be taking over now coaching with that program. So hopefully we'll be joined by her in just a little bit, but you look at her resume, everything she did as a player, 3-time All-American at Bethune-Cookman, finishing up at Maryland, and then playing professional softball, National Pro Fast Pitch Player of the Year.
I had a chance to see her with the Washington Glory. Just a great player, a great person. It's great to have someone like her in this area now and teaching younger kids, obviously, in Loudoun County where softball is so great.
Well, and just softball in general from around this area. Certainly is a sport people have been looking forward to all year, and we'll have our baseball preview later on in the episode, and hopefully we'll have Amber on the phone very soon. But so Paul, I know you've been talking with a lot of coaches from around the area, so kind of what are the big stories that people have been talking about?
Well, for softball, it's just something that a little peek into my life. That was the first sport I covered when I was an intern down in Newport News. And I love just watching softball, and I love covering it, obviously. But it should be a very, very interesting year. A lot of parity is what I've heard from a lot of coaches around the region. Just the parity in this area, in the northern region, in Loudoun County. So it should be a good year as we get Amber on the phone. It should be definitely an interesting year for softball.
Well, and it's interesting because I've been talking with a lot of coaches over the past few weeks from all the sports, across the board for spring sports, and that's been one of the biggest themes that's been running through is that there's a lot of parity this year with a lot of the spring sports. People are expecting for sports that have been dominated by one district or dominated by a handful of teams, there's finally going to be a little bit more question about who might take home the trophies at the end of the season. And so people are really excited about this, and I think this is going to be a great year to watch how the different teams' seasons unfold.
Well, in South County, who won it last year, just talking with head coach Al Thompson, he said, we skated by, and they had over extra inning games, they had one-run games, and that's how it's going to be with softball last year. That's how it was last year. That's how it's going to be this year. It's going to be some team maybe you don't expect.
Which is always, I think, the exciting thing about the spring sports season. But while we wait to get Coach Jackson on the phone, let's go ahead and segue in and talk a little bit about some boys lacrosse here, because, of course, this is a great area in the state of Virginia for boys lacrosse, and you look at the names on this list, some of these northern region players to watch, and Chantilly, which has been so dominant over the past few years, they lost so many seniors to graduation over the past 2 years, and so a lot of people think this might be a rebuilding year for them, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I do think that we have Coach Amber Jackson on the phone. Coach, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, this is your first season coaching. What are you most excited about?
To see the young people really thrive. I mean, they have so much energy and they want so much and they look up to me, and it's exciting.
You won your first game against James Wood on March 17th. What do you think this team can improve on right now as the season goes forward, and what things do you think you guys are doing really well right now?
I think we're doing very well on improving inning by inning. We have our ups and downs, but we're constantly improving. And every day at practice, I see a vast improvement. And our aggressiveness, learning to really attack the ball, just making things happen. And I'm really excited about the way they hit last night.
Well, speaking of that game last night, you got another big victory last night. So can you talk a little bit about that outing?
We came out ready to attack the ball. I mean, against James, we didn't hit as well as we should have. We struggled a little bit, having patience at the plate. And then this last game came out and attacked the ball, and I thought that made the biggest difference.
Now, obviously, you had a great career playing softball. Is there anything you're trying to focus on to teach these younger kids about what worked for you and why you were able to be so successful?
Mostly learning from your mistakes and not being afraid to go for it. People tend to be a little bit more reserved, like a lot of the younger kids I've ran across these days, athletes seem to be very reserved in the way they play the game, afraid to make the mistakes. And I've just tried to really let them know that it's all about taking risks. If you don't get out there and you don't go hard and you don't go for it, then you'll never know. So our theme is not holding back, and really going for what we want. Every single time, don't hold anything back.
Now, I know in your first game against James Wood, one player that really stood out was your pitcher, Kylie. Can you talk a little bit about her and the expectations for her this season?
Just as a freshman coming in, we just sat and talked to her like, we want you to pitch for us, and just hitting spots is really crucial. Having command over your and not backing down, staying focused on what you need to do.
What other players do you think we should be looking out for this year?
I think Kelly D-back, she's going to have a very good impact. I'm sorry, her last name is Durbig, but we call her D-back. I think she's going to be a very influential player on our team, just behind the plate, being a leader. I think she has the qualities of a leader as a junior. Katie, she's a little spark plug. She's out there in the outfield, being our senior on the field, just being a leader that way. As our only upperclassman, really. We have Melissa Conway. I really think Erin has a lot of potential to start things off. She's leading it off. And it's great having Alex Trudeau behind her. She can hit, she can punch, she can do it all. And then having Renee at first base, her bat is, you just never know what's going to happen. Good things happen when she swings the bat. So, I'm excited about my lineup, to be honest. I really feel like it flows and it works for us, and everybody can feed off of each other. I'm never in a spot where I feel like nobody's going to hit. I feel like they can all do it. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. Well, Coach, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to following you guys this season.
All right.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. So it sounds like a great team that they have out there in Loudoun County. They're going to be a fun team to watch. And
Most
obviously,
definitely.
as we said, just a great story for the region. That a talent like Amber Jackson working with the young people and really just such a role model for them to look up to and to try to emulate.
Definitely a good coaching get for Loudoun County.
All right, well, let's jump back into boys lacrosse. Lots to talk about here because obviously the Northern region has really owned the state title here for the past few years. But as we said, Chantilly, one of these teams where a lot of people say it might be a bit of a rebuilding year for them, even though Kevin Broderick, obviously one of the best coaches from around the region, and they have such a great youth feeder program that comes into Chantilly. So a lot of people don't even know what they'll have because all these great young players will be stepping into some big shoes to fill. But one that they know is going to be good is obviously Brendan Waters, who's had a great career the past few years and will be one of the senior leaders on the Chantilly team.
And look out for Herndon, their great attack. Ben Mank, I'm hearing, is probably one of the top 3 attackmen in the area. Also with Billy Kelly, that's going to be a great 1-2 punch for the Hornets.
All right, and then Lake Braddock, obviously a lot of football talent is going to be playing on the lacrosse field. And then Thomas Stickford is one of those who, this is his first year playing lacrosse, but Paul, we watched him play all football season and he was so impressive. And people always tell us, or at least tell me, that those football skills translate very well onto the lacrosse field. And so I think he's going to be an exciting one to watch and to see how that develops because I think people are really excited about him.
It's going to be interesting. They may develop with the running and maybe a little hitting, but it's always tough to catch that ball. I tried to get into the cross late, and it did not work out very well for me. So obviously, I don't have the athletic ability of Thomas Stickford. So we'll see what happens.
Moving on, let's talk a little bit about the defending state champion Langley Saxons because they have so much talent back. I mean, this is going to be a deadly team. They did lose some athletes to graduation, but Ethan Bailey is back. Obviously, he's very dangerous on the attack, and Joey Byrne, Thomas Robinson, just a few from among the list. It was so hard to pick Langley players to watch because when you look at their roster, there's absolutely so much talent there.
Well, Langley, the player for Langley is Thomas Robinson, the defender, the best defender in the area. We see Madison players. I'll get to them in a second at the bottom of that list. I had a chance to watch Madison and Langley play last Saturday, and Thomas Robinson was going up against Will Sobolski, who is, in a lot of people's opinion, the best attackman in the area. And early on, Sobolski got the better of Robinson, scoring 2 quick goals. And actually, Madison was leading Langley 5-3 at halftime. Remember, Madison is the only team that beat the Saxons last year. They beat them in the regular season. Obviously, Langley got their revenge in the Liberty District Finals, but Madison is that team that beat Langley. Their lone loss, 21-1, were the Saxons last year. Could have been 22-0 in that game. It was Langley was leading with 6 seconds left. There was a thunder. They had to delay the game. Madison scores with 6 seconds left to send it into overtime, and then Madison won in overtime. So it was a great game to watch on Saturday. Langley obviously coming back. They rattled off 6 goals, in a row to beat Madison. But yeah, Thomas Robinson, he is their player. He makes them go. And obviously Ethan Bailey and Joey Burnt are great on offense for them. And speaking of Gordon Bailey and Will Sobolski, that is, I mentioned Harnon's attack. That is an amazing attack as well for Madison, for the Warhawks. And even though they lost to Langley, expect great things from Madison this year.
Expect great things from Madison and expect great things from the Liberty District. I mean, this is going to be a really exciting district to watch this year, as it was last year. Woodson not in the Liberty District this year like they were last year, so that's another great team that we'll talk about in just a minute. But still lots of exciting lacrosse to be played in the Liberty District. And Andrew Semth, who we didn't even talk about from Lee, but so many of the coaches that I talked to when I asked them who they thought were going to be some of the top players this year, he was mentioned time and time again. So great talent over at Lee. Now looking at this, Robinson is another team that a lot of people think is going to be exceptionally strong this year. Obviously, Coach Fitzgerald over there, a great coach at Robinson, and their goalkeeper, Keenan Kevin, phenomenal.
We mentioned the top defender, we mentioned the top attackman. Keenan Kevin is the best goalie in this northern region. And also you see Derek Maltz from Stonebridge. I mentioned Sobolski, I mentioned Mag. He is also in there in the top 3, Derek Maltz from Stonebridge. But yeah, Keenan Kevin, watch out for him. He is the best goalie in this area.
And returning for Westfield, Eric Alter has been phenomenal the past few years, and I think people are expecting him to really have a fantastic senior season.
Also for Westfield, we mentioned Thomas Stickford coming in playing lacrosse. You also have the rest, Austin Fallon. I'm sorry, but Austin Fallon's also playing and expected to do great things for the Bulldogs this year as well.
All right, we'll get to our final players in just a second, but I think we're joined on the phone now by Oakton's head coach, Griff Barrett. Coach, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I understand you guys have a big event going on over at Oakton this evening, but obviously your team, when you look at the roster, there's so much senior leadership and senior talent on your team. Can you talk a little bit about this senior class and how important they're going to be to your team this year?
Yeah, we have a very special group of senior leaders who have taken personal responsibility and accountability for themselves as well as the team. The boys have been working really hard, both in the classroom and in the community as well as the field.
And on the other side, you have some great underclassmen that have played well to start the year. Can you talk a little about them?
Yeah, the underclassmen have had to grow up pretty quickly this season, and they're working really hard every day and are playing at a pretty high level. We're very lucky to have a very talented group of underclassmen.
Now, you guys always play a tough schedule. You've already had Politics and you've had Westfield. What have you guys taken away from those games, things to improve upon, and things that you're really pleased with at this juncture of the season?
Well, the team sat down early in the year and kind of created some goals, and our goal from the beginning of the year has been to get better every day. And we're not concerned about where we are in March, but that we're improving every day. Thus far in the season, I really feel like we've reached that goal so far.
Talked with Rich over at Madison. He mentioned Vienna Lacrosse, and that's just a great feeder program. Obviously, you guys benefit from that as well. Can you talk about how these youngsters come up into your program already with those great lacrosse skills?
Well, we benefit not only from Vienna, but from CYA as well. And both youth programs have been very supportive of us. I think my senior class split 50-50 with guys that participated in CYA and participated in BYI. Both the player evaluations for the under 15, under 13, the guys have been trying to be involved with because they know how important it is to have those great youth programs, and they're very, very appreciative of both the Chantilly and Vienna youth programs and where they came from.
Now, obviously, right now you're slated to play T.C. Williams this Friday. I guess with the weather, you never know what can happen. But are there particular things you're focusing on for that game?
Kind of very similar to the question earlier. We really are trying to just worry about ourselves and get better every day. Have fun, improve. And like I said, I feel like so far that's been happening, and I anticipate that trend continuing.
Now, the weather has obviously been a big story with the snow first and during the winter, and it take a while to get out on the field, and now the rain. Can you talk about how that's affected the team?
Yeah, I mean, it's affected us the same way it's affected everybody else in the region. All the coaches that I've spoken with are being as creative as they can with the limited options. We've gone in the morning, we've gone on turf field, we've gone in the parking lot, we've gone in the gym. The boys were out before the season started to come to the track to help the track dry quicker. I've been impressed with their ability to adapt on a daily basis, not really knowing what's going to come, and to practice hard no matter what the location.
Now, Coach, in looking at your schedule, you have a couple of tournaments coming up, and when I talk to coaches, they always say how important those events are for their teams. Can you talk a little bit about those events that are coming up?
Absolutely. The tournaments are important for two reasons. One, because of the way the Northern Region works. If you don't participate in one or up to two tournaments, you don't get as many games. So that's the most important reason, with the VHSL and the Northern Region not aligning themselves equally. But this Friday and Saturday, we're participating in the Madison tournament. It's going to be a celebration of the Finish Hard, which is the Dennis Stewart Foundation. I'm not sure if you guys know much about that
Absolutely.
yet.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we'll be placing clutch buckets out for the spectators to donate funds to the cause. We're going to invite all the NBYLL participants to wear their jerseys, celebrate the opening of the NBYLL season. Kids in uniform are going to get in free with a parent. And we're just really excited to be able to participate in this event.
Well, Coach, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to following Oakton this year.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Coach.
Well, I'm glad that he brought up the Finish Hard Foundation, because obviously the big story from around the region this year is that our very good friend and colleague Dennis Stewart suffered a stroke last year and will not be on the sidelines this year. And it's such a huge loss for the lacrosse community, because he brings so much energy, and he's such a great teacher, great coach, has really influenced so many young people from around this area. But Dennis still continuing to be an inspiration for everyone around the region. And his brother has started the Finish Hard Foundation, which has already just gained so much traction. It's amazing what they've done in such a short period of time. And of course, as Coach Barright mentioned, this weekend, this tournament that Madison is sponsoring is for the Finish Hard Foundation. That's one of the components of it. And so a great event. I certainly encourage everyone to go out to that event or any of the Finish Hard events that will be coming up. And of course, we will preview all of those here on this program, because it's just a great endeavor and a great celebration of Dennis and who he is, because of what he's brought to the Northern Region for the past few years.
Yeah, the lacrosse community, that's a very close-knit community, and obviously Dennis is an ambassador of the sport, so it's great to see the community kind of rally around him.
All right, but a couple of more players that we want to talk a little bit about. We didn't get to talk about the Woodson West Springfield standouts, who are absolutely on everyone's radar this season. You look at just the number of players. These were other teams where it was really hard just to look down the roster and pick out a couple of players, because there's so much talent on these two teams.
Another interesting story here between Woodson and West Springfield. Last season, West Springfield went undefeated in the Patriot District, obviously won the Patriot District, then met up with Woodson in the playoffs and lost to the Cavaliers. This year, what happens? Woodson joins the Patriot District, so that should be really entertaining to watch. Woodson, West Springfield, and Annandale. Put Annandale on that list. It's going to be a great year in the Patriot District. Take a look at Eric Schauder over at West Springfield. He's one of their top players, and obviously that strong Woodson defense with Hancock and Meacham.
Well, and certainly that's been another storyline from around the region all year long, is how the districts have been reshaped for this season, and we've seen how that has impacted the sports in the fall and the winter, and certainly going to be another big story as we continue on into the spring. Obviously, Fairfax playing in the Liberty District now, Hayfield playing in the National District, and so lots of excitement to watch there to see how new rivalries spring up a little bit and develop.
Absolutely, it'll be great to watch this year. It's going to be a fun spring in all the sports, especially lacrosse.
And continuing on with lacrosse, let's talk a little bit now about girls lacrosse, because it is just as exciting as boys lacrosse in this region, and certainly the girls lacrosse teams from around this area have owned the state championship as well for as long as it's been going on. And of course the team that everybody was talking about last year was Michelle Gates' Chantilly squad, because obviously they'd been shut out of those state titles and were back last year competing with that great squad that had so much talent on it, and they have so much talent returning, particularly in Liz Dunwoody, who's been sensational for the past 2 seasons and now is going to be a senior.
Yeah, Elizabeth Dunwoody, she was one of the top 3 players on that Chantilly team last year. Well, the other 2, they're gone, and this is Elizabeth Dunwoody's team. And Chantilly, they lost a lot of talent, but you can check out a feature we did at the Fairfax Times by Dave Buschenfeld this week on Elizabeth Dunwoody. She's a captain. It's going to be her team. We'll see what she's able to do with these Chargers.
All right, and then a couple of talents over at Herndon as well. Very excited about Jessica Singer and Gracie Williams. Moving on to take a look at a couple of other players on our players to watch list. First of all, Langley, always very solid with lacrosse. They lost Maggie Kovacs. She's off at Oregon playing this year. She was obviously their leader last season, one of the best players from around the region. So it's going to be interesting to see what that team looks like. But obviously, Rich DeSoma, a great coach and some great talent over at Langley. But that was a huge loss that Maggie Kovacs graduated.
You see Madison Kiki Brown, I'm hearing a lot of good things about. Hannah Longwell, she was the Northern Region Goalkeeper of the Year last year as a junior on a 4-5 team. So she was that talented. Usually the better record teams, they get their players get the individual honors, but Longwell did just such a fantastic job. She's going to be a senior now, obviously the returning goalie of the year. When I talked with Annie Anzarello about Longwell, you can see that story also in the Fairfax Times this week, is she's learning to come out of the crease a lot. She's wanted to since she was a freshman, kind of move around, and now she has interception, she gets ground balls. She's almost like an extra defender on the field because she has that confidence in herself where she can just leave the crease, as most goalies obviously wait for the shot, block the shot, send it away from in the crease. Longwell, you'll see her running around the field.
Now, Madison also was a team, you were talking a little bit about Kiki Brown, but a lot of coaches that I've been talking to, they really like this Madison team. They might be the team that finally goes in and shakes things up with all the Concord District teams winning these state championships. A lot of people have very high hopes for this Madison squad. And then you have to talk about Oakton, Gene Counts' team, because they really owned the state title for a couple of years and then had to rebuild a little bit last year. People thought it was a rebuilding season for them, and they were phenomenal last year. Gene Counts is a phenomenal coach, and then they have so much sophomore talent. Those freshmen have now matured to sophomores, and high expectations for them as well.
Well, we were just talking about the boys' side with the CYA and Vienna Lacrosse. They bring these top-flight talented kids already into the system. That's why you saw a couple sophomores on that Oakton team already getting the publicity.
All right, more players to talk about now. First of all, Robinson, of course, they had a great season last year as well. They have an amazing goalkeeper in Kelsey Zink back for her senior year, and then Rachel Moody, of course, who will be playing for Cornell next season.
Megan Weirs is a senior now. I remember covering her when she was just a youngster, and everybody was really high on Megan Weirs and coming back for South County. Also, Lauren Gusti over at Stonebridge, she's been such a top talent for years as well. And interesting thing about Jeb Stewart, you see a couple players on Jeb Stewart. Lizzie McManus took over this program in the offseason. Everybody knows in the Northern Region, Lizzie McManus, just a great field hockey coach for Oakton, also an assistant varsity lacrosse, a head JV coach and assistant varsity coach at Oakton. So she has never been a head coach of a varsity lacrosse team, but coming in, and she obviously has that pedigree. She said it hasn't really been that hard at all.
All right, well, I think we are joined on the phone now by our last phone guest, Claire Collins. Can you hear us, Coach?
Yes, I can hear you. Yep. How you doing?
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, your team off to a great start, a big win over Heritage in your season opener. Can you talk a little bit about that game?
Yeah, that was our first non-district game, and we played really well together as a team. We won 3-0. We actually played Loudoun Valley last night. We tied 0-0, and it was a fantastic game last night. We did get lucky. We probably should have maybe lost that game, but they had a lot of chances, and we had a lot of chances, but neither team could score, and we've just been waiting to play Valley because they've been an up-and-coming team that's just been really good. So Yeah, we're just looking for another great season. We have 12 players back, 10 new players, and we're just looking for, trying to get to win the state again.
I'm going to get back to that Loudon Valley game real quick because I've never heard a 0-0 game in lacrosse. Can you talk some more?
Soccer.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Soccer.
Yeah.
Then that is fine. Girls soccer, that's 0-0 is fine. Can you talk a little bit more about that game and what playing Loudon Valley means?
Well, we've been waiting to play them for the past couple of years, and they've been, back and forth. Or, excuse me, they've been the AAA team inside. So both groups, Broad Run and Valley, they both play on the same club teams, and they've just had a lot of history, and they're both very solid teams, us and Loudon Valley. And, honestly, Valley, they really had a better desire to win than us last night. But, we still fought, we've tried to find the will to win. And fortunately, I guess, we did tie. But I know that they were looking forward to hand Broad Run their first loss. We haven't had that yet. But, our goals this year are to make it to the state game, and you don't have to be undefeated to make it to the state game. So, we know that. We know the target's on our back, but we're just going to take it game by game and try to get to Radford in June.
Absolutely. What you guys have done over the past 2 years, the back-to-back state championships, is absolutely phenomenal. I know you've lost some players to graduation. Who are some of the players this year that you really are expecting to step up, and it'll certainly be ones that people are watching for you guys to go for your three-peat?
Definitely our back line. We've got Casey Kelly, who's a junior, Brenna Smith, and Jenny Taylor are seniors, and they've been, the anchor of our defense for the past 3 years. And Whitney Church, who is our center mid, she's a junior, and Ellie Zofel, she's a junior, and then our freshmen that are going to be key players for us, Cassie Smith, she's a freshman. She's actually the third Smith girl to come through our program, and also our newcomer for our goalie. We got Haley Casanova for our freshman goalie, and then we have Emily Meyerson as our goalie for she's a sophomore. So we're looking, to get these new players to get gelled and mesh with the team, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of months.
Clearly, Coach, how quickly you guys gel is going to be based on your leadership. You have 4 seniors on the team. Can you talk about how they act as leaders?
Yeah, I mean they're very they're very responsible. They're kind. They're caring. They're very serious. And with the girls, you got to just make sure you balance the level of competition and also the likability of each other. So, and I think they do a really good job of that. And that's going to be our big key factor, is making sure that we all, gel together and just come together as a unit. And the sooner we get that done, the quicker we are going to be able to have a good, successful season.
Coach, you mentioned the fact, and I think it's very true, you guys have the bullseye on your back, and I know Loudon Valley was a big game for you guys. And while you try not to look ahead and try not to emphasize some games more than others, are there particular ones that your team seems to look forward to every year, the big rivalries and the games that really people are getting excited about for this year?
Yeah, definitely Valley. They've been up for that one, and it's always Stonebridge, since they're right in our backyard. And also for County, Loudon County and Broad Run for soccer, they always have a good match. And, over the past couple of years, we tied them last year. That was our only tie, and then we ended up beating them the second game. But it's always been a good battle between County and us. So those are the games that we usually get up for. But, you can't sleep on all the other, the other schools, because their programs are getting stronger and better. And, they could, on any given day, someone can squeeze in a win somewhere.
All right. Well, Coach, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to following you guys this season.
Oh, you bet. Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it.
Well, Monica, I thought it was lacrosse. My brain was in lacrosse. I apologize, Coach. That was quickly fixed. I know it's girls soccer, but just lacrosse was in my mind because we were just talking about it.
Right, because we took that break away from lacrosse, and still a couple more players. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the rest of these players on the list. So obviously Mary Barondest over at Westfield. some coaches said to me she could carry this team by herself. She's that good. I mean, obviously Westfield has a lot of talent, but Mary Barondess is a phenomenal player. She'll be playing for Longwood next season.
Most definitely. Dominique McNary Dixon from Washington DeLee. I'm also hearing some good things. And then you see West Springfield with the trio there. Just a great, Spartans have a great team with that senior leadership, and the duo over at Woodson as well. Should be interesting.
Absolutely. So another sport where people are wondering who's going to be the team this year to beat. Obviously, Chantilly has all of that talent back, and Michelle Gates, year after year, has that team ready to go at the right time. Oakton, a lot of people are talking about Robinson, but then some of these other teams, Madison, Woodson, so many great teams from around the area. So we'll definitely keep you posted as the season progresses with that. All right, but now we've talked a little bit about softball. Now let's talk a little bit about Northern Region baseball, because Paul, you had a great piece a couple weeks ago about previewing the Northern Region baseball in the area. Obviously, McLean is certainly a team that everybody's been talking about.
That seems to be the top team everybody's talking about as we take a look at the top 10 preseason rankings. McLean right up there, and we'll talk about the reason for that, because I think that's well deserved. You see Lake Braddock at 2, West Springfield 3, Westfield 4, and Centerville 5, and then the bottom of that list, you see South County and TC Williams tied for 10th. And we'll be updating this poll throughout the year, right? And this is the preseason poll before games were played.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of these athletes that are on everyone's radar right now from around the region. Who are some of your players that you think are really going to have standout years?
Well, Ryan Ashuse is one of the best pitchers. There's a lot of good pitchers. Again, there's so many talented pitchers. Ryan Ashuse is fantastic for Centerville. Also looking, you see Jason Eldridge over at Herndon, a great outfielder. Kenny Towns, Ryan Lindemuth from Lake Braddock, also two great pitchers and infielders.
All right, so continuing on looking at this list, some additional talent. There you have all of McLean guys, and of course Riley Byro and Sean Fitzgerald are two of the top players in this area.
Yeah, Byro, you know him from football, so talented, great center fielder for McLean. I mean, obviously, if he says football is his number one, but he does so well at baseball, and he's actually getting better this year. You can already see the improvement from last year to this year. Sean Fitzgerald, another great pitcher. He actually battled Ryan Ashue in the playoffs last year as Ashue got the better of him. I believe it was 1-0. Both pitchers pitched a complete game, and Ashue got the better of Fitzgerald in that. So Fitzgerald coming back strong this year. Looking at Luke Willis over at Oakton, the utility player, is fantastic, and Matt Chandler also for the Oakton Cougars.
All right, and then finishing out the list for us, of course, a couple of players from over at Westfield standing out. Stonebridge always has top athletes. Spencer Rosatano, a player we talked about a lot during football season, also another one of those dual athletes along with Riley Byro that brings so much to every sport he plays.
And look at Bobby Wall from West Springfield. I mentioned the top talent pitchers in this area. Also see Danny Thorpe. Westfield has a bunch of great pitchers. Thorpe leading the pack there. But Bobby Wall, he is the best player. He's the best pitcher in the area. He's the best pitcher in the region. So watch out for Bobby when he's on the mound.
All right, and obviously, as we said, McLean, a lot of people think they're very hungry this year. And so we saw the coaches poll. Paul, what are your instincts about who really are the teams you think that are going to step it up late in the season?
Well, one thing that I always focus on, and I try not to do my own. If there's a coaches poll,
right.
That's right. Coaches know the best. You know,
just asking for some predictions that I can call you on later in the year.
This may be my career and everything, but no, I think the coaches know the best. And I like McLean. I obviously like. One thing though, you got to see them do it. They don't have the pedigree. They last won. They won the district, but before that, the last time they won the district was in 2000. They haven't won the region in quite a long time. It's in the article for the Fairfax Times. I don't remember. I have a horrible memory. I don't remember the last time, but it was a long time ago that they last won the region. So you'd like to see them do that before you can say this is the top team, but. We'll see. I like McLean, though. I like the talent they bring back, obviously, with Byro and Fitzgerald.
All right. Well, before we close up this first part of our spring preview, one last sport to talk about, Paul, is tennis. I know you've been following this and want to talk about a couple of the players out there that are to watch and then a couple players that aren't playing this year.
Yeah, with tennis, it's interesting because the top tennis players, they don't really have time to play high school. So we have some amazing top in the Mid-Atlantic, top in the nation tennis players. You see Mitchell Frank, who lives in Annandale. You see Dennis Kudla, who I think would have gone to Woodson, but but lives in Arlington. It's confusing. But those two players, they don't play high school tennis. And now I was actually planning to do a story on Jason Liu from Fairfax. He was with Balaji. They won the Northern Region doubles title last year. Obviously, Balaji, he graduated. So Jason Liu, I was really focusing in on him. He decided last week that maybe he's not going to do high school tennis because it's tough for these kids, because most of these kids, as Jason Liu, 4.0 grade point average, actually took his SATs down in Alabama, where he was in a week-long tournament. Came back from that tournament and said, "Ooh, I'm pretty exhausted. I might not." It's still up in the air. He might do high school tennis, but right now he's not. So what I focused on is TJ. Thomas Jefferson, they have a great tennis program, boys and girls. The boys broke through and won the Northern Region. Obviously, Robinson had won the state 3 years prior. Jefferson breaks through, wins the Northern Region. The girls' side, they won 3 consecutive Northern Region titles. So always watch out for Thomas Jefferson. They look to be able to have another great year because they have that talent always coming up.
All right, so definitely something to keep our eyes on is how tennis unfolds this year, particularly with some of the top talent sitting out on the high school level, and which teams rise to the top there. All right, but before we go, obviously there was one sport missing from our spring preview, boys soccer, that we didn't talk about this evening, because so much to cover when you do a spring preview episode, and just definitely wanted to give boys soccer their due, because it's always an exciting sport from around the area. Obviously Westfield had a great year last year. We'll talk more about that next week, so please don't think that we did not cover boys soccer, because we'll definitely take care of that next week. And I know Paul's going to have a story coming out in the Fairfax Times previewing soccer as well, so lots of different ways that you can get your information about boys soccer. But again, just the other story this week, so many games still being canceled due to the rain, so it's going to be interesting to see how teams deal with that, particularly as we move on in the season.
I thought it was going to be a bigger story, but it ended up not being as big with all the snow on the ground, obviously the blizzards that we had. Teams had to practice elsewhere indoors in the beginning of the season. Obviously, though, the weather changed almost, it seemed like, immediately, and the snow began to melt, and it was less of a story. But still, you know, first they had the snow on the ground when their season was starting for practices, and now with the rain, again, remember, it was pretty rainy last year as well, so they got to find ways to get these games in. Obviously, the snow really hurt basketball, so we'll see the winter sports as a whole, so we'll see what happens this spring.
And obviously one way that teams are able to get around that a little bit are these tournaments. We heard Coach Griff Barheit talking about that tournament coming up this weekend for Oakton, and that's certainly one way that these teams get in on a couple of games, get to face a lot of talent, and perhaps some talent they wouldn't necessarily see, because teams often come in for these tournaments, or teams travel away, spring break, teams go away and get to play in these tournaments and face some competition that they wouldn't otherwise see. And before we go, of course, again, want to mention that tournament coming up at Madison this weekend, because it's going to be such a great event, and we certainly encourage everybody to go out and support those lacrosse teams and to support the Finish Hard Foundation. Well, before we go, we certainly do want to thank the folks once again that make our program possible, our good friends at CCI Screen Printing, for all of your screen printing needs. Also, special thanks to Craig Strabutzel for our fantastic photos, as well as Dan Sousa at Viva Loudon for some of the other photos you saw on the program. Don't forget, you can get copies of this show at www.pressboxvideo.com, and you can check out highlights, interviews, and more on our website. Become a fan of the Fairfax Sports Network on our Facebook page, and please send us any story ideas that you have. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight at our Spring Preview episode part 1. We'll be back next week with part 2.